wondered, I wonder what it's like to go viral? Well, my name is Alex Sheen. I'm the founder of Because I Said I Would. And for better, or for worse, I know exactly what it's like to go viral. I'd like to tell you the story of how that happened and what I learned from it. It's a story that actually starts with my dad. Shown here. Getting a little bit chubby in this area, Dad, just a little bit. It's funny because I remember when I was like a little kid, like a real little kid, I remember looking up to my dad and being like, man, Dad, you are not good looking. And that was like a really unfortunate thought, because I would grow up to look exactly like him, So that's terrible news for me. That's what that means. But it's true, my father was average looking. He was average in a lot of things. We're not talking about some kind of war hero. My father didn't write books or run marathons. He was just a pharmacist in a hospital for 25 years. And sure, through his profession, he tried to help people, right? You work at a hospital, that's probably what you should do. But the truth is, if you would have ever known my father in some other life, you would never go home and talk about Al Sheen, He is far too average, too normal for you to go do that, right? Unnoticeable. Except for one thing. My father was a man of his word. To me and to my brother. When he said he was going to be there for you, he showed up. My father was far from a perfect person, but he kept his promises. And it turns out when it comes to keeping promises, well, a lot of people just don't do that, I guess. And so one day, my father, this kind of greedy pharmacist guy, it's 2011, he's sitting at home and he hears his phone ring. So he goes and he grabs it and he turns it over, and it's the hospital call, which of course is where it works, so he swipes, he answers, and on the other line is a doctor, a friend of his that he works with at the hospital. And in this phone conversation, my father is informed that he has been diagnosed with stage 4 small cell lung cancer. And my father was a go-down swinging kind of man. He came to the United States as an immigrant. And I say that because sometimes it's not so easy making it on your own. You have to develop some pretty tough skin to get by. And so with this attitude throughout his life, at the point of his diagnosis, my father elected for the most aggressive treatment, for radiation and chemotherapy. Now, a lot of people have obviously heard this phrase before, chemotherapy. But not many people know what it actually is. You see, chemotherapy is quite literally a poison. It was developed prior to World War II, and it is based on a primitive concept. The thought is that you poison the body so deeply that the cancer simply cannot live in its conditions. But perhaps this is the only way to give the patient a chance. Now remember something for a second. My father was a pharmacist in a hospital for 25 years. He knew more about the drugs he was taking than a lot of people ever will. But with that comes a distinct knowledge, a scientific understanding of the odds that are against you. And in the case of my father, those odds were terrible. But sometimes we got to go down swinging. So he took this medication. And it actually started to work. This cancer that grew so close to my father's heart that it was surgically inoperable, couldn't be cut out. It began to shrink though. So small that you couldn't see it on any of these medical scans they kept doing on my dad over and over and over again, and even him, the most genuine of skeptics, I assure you. He deemed it some sort of miracle that perhaps he was saved. Now, I don't know if your family's ever dodged something like this, but this is obviously good news, right? This is a positive turnaround for his health. So I feel like, we got to celebrate. I went to college. I know how to celebrate, right? So I go to my dad. I used to call him old man, to his face. I said, old man, you listen. Anything you want, Dad. Anywhere you want to go. Money is no object. We got to celebrate this moment. This is incredible news. Okay, let's hear it, Dad. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What does he say? He says, I want Chinese food. Same Chinese restaurant every single time. It didn't matter what the occasion was, you know. He was kind of boring like that. You know how dads can be. They got their routine. They like what they like, so whatever. Go to the same place again for the 7 trillionth time. And we had a good meal. It's a good day. Kind of day that I think a lot about. And the kind of day that I wish I had just one more of. But as many of you have perhaps already noticed, I speak of my father in the past tense. Cancer does not care how much you love your family. The disease would return to his lungs. It would spread into his liver, into his pancreas, and into his brain. On September 4th of 2012, it was a bright morning. In the house that I grew up in as a child, as a grown man, I would go to my father's bedside and I'd play some music for him that I thought he might like. I held his hand, and with the best ability that I had as his son, I desperately tried to comfort my father as he died. And you and I, we are only strangers. And I do not know if you have ever lost someone that you have loved. I have. His name was Al Sheen. He had 2 sons. I'm one of them. He worked to put a roof over my head, to pay for my college. I'm named after him. You know, in the course of all of our losses, we have so many questions. Like why him and why now? Why does it have to be me and my family? And in this struggle, we are afforded very few answers. In my struggle, I was asked by my family to give my father's eulogy, the final resting speech at his funeral, to speak to his greatest characteristic, his greatest quality as a man. And I kept coming back to this thought: the importance of a promise. You see, too often in life, people say things like, I'll get to it, or tomorrow. Well, I've learned that one day, there is no tomorrow. And the promises that we make and we keep, and those we choose to dishonor, that is what defines us and our character. It always has. Long before my father was ever born, and long after I go, it is a single measure of honor, one that we use so quickly to judge other people, right? You know, how they treat their promises. But perhaps as quickly we should use this to judge ourselves. I would give my father's eulogy, and the title of this speech would be, Because I Said I Would. I would talk about the importance of a promise at his funeral, and for the very first time that day, I would hand out one of these. I called it a promise card. It's a simple concept. What you do is you take a promise in your life. You know, maybe something small you said today, or maybe it's something so deep that it defines part of your purpose for being on this earth. You write that promise on this card. You go to the person you're making that commitment to. You tell them, I'm going to fulfill this promise, and when I do, I earn this card back. This card is a symbol of my honor, my respect. It is my property, and I'm coming back for it. You go, you fulfill your promise. You come back to that person. You earn your card back. You keep it as a reminder that you are a person of your worth. Maybe someone like Al Sheen was to his sons. And so his funeral ends, and I go home.